As soon as Thanksgiving hits, it officially becomes the season that I like to refer to as be nice to your dysfunctional family member season. I mean, you got to have dinner with them. Typically, it's at least once, maybe it's twice. And so you got to figure out how I'm going to get through this with all the dysfunction that's happening in their life, because you're not the dysfunctional one, right? I mean, it's always somebody else. And everybody's got them. Like, if your family doesn't have any dysfunction, well, I mean, your problem is probably boring. That's no fun. Like, dysfunction is good. You probably have a guy, he's probably, honestly, let's just be super stereotypical here. It's probably a single guy. And maybe it's probably one of the cousins that's now grown up to be an adult. He's not in the kids' world anymore or something like that. And the group text goes out, which, hold on, let me pause on this for a second. I'm just gonna say this out loud. The group text that goes out about food for holiday things, even in my own family, not my wife's side of the family, in my own family, I'm excluded from the text. My wife is in the text, but I'm not in the text. All the wives are in the text. I want to be in the text because I have input into what we should be eating on these holiday gatherings. Like, they will have conversations with themselves about, well, since we're having mashed potatoes, we don't need macaroni and cheese. Hello? Excuse me? I don't want to actually make anything. I just want to tell them that I want input in what we're bringing. Anyway, that's a side point. So I'm not in the text, but usually if you're single, you still get the text because you got to bring something. And so it's a single guy that shows up. It's like, I'm bringing a side dish. Like, what side are you bringing? I'll figure it out. And he shows up with like a bag of chips, But, and the chips are like open because he got a little hungry on the way over there, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe you've got someone in your family, like a family fact checker. Like you're sitting around and you're like sharing memories and you're like telling the story. Like, remember back in 1994 when I was doing this? And the family person, like the family fact checker, was like, hold on, wait, that was actually spring of 95. I remember because I had bronchitis. You remember when I had bronchitis? It's like, the story's not about you. And I don't know, 94, 95, it was in the 90s. It is what it is. Who remembers? Or maybe you've got an overly affectionate aunt that likes to kiss you on the cheek and leaves DNA every single time. Or maybe you got got a new hobby, which changes my identity, cousin or uncle. 4 years ago, it was CrossFit. 3 years ago, it was essential oils. Last year, it was keto. This year, it's probably going to be hot yoga. Hot yoga, huh? Yeah. Or maybe you got an uncle that starts every single conversation with, here's the problem with America. Some of you are like, what's wrong with saying that? There is problems in America. I got it. No matter how dysfunctional your family is, I'm not sure that you can outdo the dysfunction in the family of Jesus. Let me tell you a story. There was a guy named Judah. Judah, big name for the people of God. In the history of the Jewish people, the guy Judah, it's just a name that if you're Jewish, it's like, this is a big deal. In fact, even if you're not Jewish, if you've been in and around Christianity at all, you've probably heard the phrase Lion of Judah. This is that Judah, right? Not the Lion of Judah, but this is where the Judah comes from. Judah's a big deal. Judah goes and gets married, and he has a family. Judah has 3 sons, great young lads. They start to grow up and mature. All the good things that you do when you got sons that are growing up. And part of the responsibility in this particular culture, which I guess I should tell you where we're at, this is like way BC, like generations and generations and generations before Jesus ever shows up. It's a long time before Jesus gets here. So in this particular time, arranged marriages were pretty common all over the place. And so Judah goes out, his oldest son, his oldest son, it's time for him to take a wife. He goes and finds him a wife, and evidently she was fine. So he thought she was pretty. Ur thought she was pretty. Something else like, and he's like, hey, Dad, you did good with this one, kind of thing. And so they get married, and everything is going fine. Here's the problem. The Bible doesn't tell us what or how. It just simply states the fact that was wicked, right? And the result of him being wicked is it cost him his life. I don't know if he was doing something wicked and that got him killed, or he was just, we don't know, but he was wicked, he's dead. Now when that happens, his wife becomes a widow. Now, his wife's name was Tamar. Now, it didn't take long for to get dead. It was like early on. So they didn't have any kids. She was still young. He was very young. His wickedness got him killed. He's out of the picture. Tamar's still in the picture, though. Now, here's the thing. In this particular world, when you became a widow, it was a big deal. Not to the rest of everyone, but to you. Not that it's not a big deal now, but it's so much more. So let me tell you why. So typically, if you marry the firstborn, that's incredible. He gets a bigger inheritance. Your lifestyle is going to be so much better marrying the firstborn. When he dies, if you're a widow, you get nothing. His inheritance that he had, that he would have gotten from his father, any of those things, doesn't get passed to her, doesn't get passed to Tamar. She loses it. She has to get anything she has to give back to the family. It's no longer hers. In addition to that, if you're a widow, you can't even get a lawyer. You can't represent yourself either in any court. You can't purchase property. You can't own property. In a world without a husband and without a son, you had nothing. No paycheck, no property, no lawyer, no protection, nothing. Now, this was an issue. And because this was not just a Jewish thing, this was a all over the world kind of way people lived, God decided to say, hey, this is not a way I want our people to treat each other. And so he raises the standards for his people. In the book of Deuteronomy, which is one of the early books in the Bible, it records a lot of laws and expectations for the people of God that says, hey, this is going to set you apart as being different from the rest of the world. And one of those things was what happens to how you should care for people who are widowed that do not have any children. And so the stipulation that was put in the law was if the guy who dies has a brother, that brother has to provide a child to the widow. That's the rule. Now, here's the deal. It's not like if the brother has a bunch of kids, you can pick one and say, well, I don't really like you, you go be hers, that kind of thing. It's not that. No, he literally had to give her a child, not in the sense of let me take one child and give him to you. He had to do the things to have a child with her. You following me? Okay, y'all got to have a head shaking or I'm going to say it in front of your children, okay? All right, great. That's what I'm saying. That was the law. So, Judah goes to his second born, to Onan, and says, Onan, Tamar needs a son. Now, Tamar, she was fine. So Onan said, yes, sir. I'll head that way. Here's the thing with Onan, though. And there's some little children here that probably should be upstairs, and so I'm going to have to PG this a lot. And you're going to think I'm lying. You go read Genesis 38 for yourself. Onan loved the process of having children. Okay? He loved it. He did it with her a lot. Here's the thing, though. He had no desire for her to actually get pregnant. So right at the end of what you do to make those things happen, he would... You said it. I didn't say it. I didn't say it. He would remove himself and he would do those things somewhere like on the ground. You feel me? That's what he would do. You think I'm lying. You got to go read the Bible. For all you people who are like, the Bible's boring. Genesis 38 ain't boring. So here's the deal. So he was taking advantage of her. He was taking advantage of her, but not fulfilling what God's expectation was. So he was taking hey, I want to care for widows provision. And he was just like, I like caring for this widow, baby, you know? So guess what? Guess what happened to Onan? He's dead. So now we got two dead sons. Onan, done. He's got a third son. His name is Shelah. Now, here's the thing with Shelah. Shelah was the youngest. So as Judah, being the person who's responsible for his entire family, The law says, the expectations of God is that Shelah then takes that responsibility. Shelah was too young. And so he goes to Tamar and he's like, hey, look, Shelah's just a boy, okay? So like he can't do those things yet. So this is what we want to do. He came up with a plan. He said, Tamar, why don't you go back home to your dad? Go live with him. And then when he grows up, I'll let you know. And then you can come back and have my third son as your husband. The problem is he was thinking something else too. We'll read it in Genesis 38, verse 11. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law, Tamar, live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, he may die too, just like his brothers. So he tells her, this is the plan. Go home to your daddy. When it's time, when Shelah gets old enough, I'll call you back, right? I'll call you. But his mind the whole time was, I've already got 2 dead sons. And the common denominator in both of them was they were married to her. I'm not giving him my only son I got left. And so he comes up with a plan that says, how do I get you out of here? So he sends her home to her family, which is a no-no. Like, you don't do that. Like, he's responsible for her welfare and responsible to do the things that God set out. Says, hey, this is how I want you to take care of people. And he skirts around and is like, just go home with your dad. Can you imagine what it was like for Tamar to go? Because it's not like she texted and gave a heads up or called and said, hey, Dad, I'm coming home. She shows up to her dad's house, knocks on the door, and he opens the door, and he's like, oh, it's great to see you. And she's like, yeah. He's like, I certainly miss you. You're going to see me a lot more coming up. Like, what you mean? He's like, I actually have to come home. Like, excuse me, you have to come home? Yeah. The amount of disgrace that she brings to her own family and the amount of disgrace she brings on herself as she walks back into the village she came from and moves back in with her dad. Rumors start flying, there's no doubt. Everyone she hangs out with dies. Yeah, she's carrying a lot of shame. We know that this is Judah's plan, that he's never going to call her. And she finds out. Some time passes. Doesn't tell us how much time passes, but it's enough time that Shelah has now grown up, and it's incredibly obvious that he's an adult now. And Tamar knows this. Tamar realizes he's not calling me back. Like, I'm just stuck, a widow with no sons, no rights, no income, no property. I've got nothing. And when my father dies, I will really have absolutely nothing. I have no place to stay. There's nothing for her. So she hears from a friend that Judah has some sheep that he's getting sheared. The shearer is not in his town. He's taking the herd a good ways away to get the work done. So she decides, okay, this is my shot. So she takes off her widow's clothes. She puts on a veil and some other clothes. She doesn't tell us what kind of clothes it is. It's not widow's clothes. And she goes and she finds the route where Judah would take from his home to where the sheep shearer is. It's a long distance. And she positions herself on that route with her veil on. And as Judah gets close and starts to approach her, he doesn't know who she is. I don't know what she was wearing. I don't know how she positioned herself. But Judah had the impression that whoever that was under the veil was a prostitute. Again, I don't know what she was wearing, but he sees her and he thinks she has sex for money. And so he goes over to her, and this is what he says. Judah. This is his first line. Come now, let me sleep with you. What a line. What a pickup line. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, come right now. Let me sleep with you. Yeah, I'm PG and everything for you right now. This is good. You should be so proud of me. Tamar responds, and what will you give me to sleep with you? Okay. So now they're negotiating. Judah says, I'll send you a young goat from my flock. So when Judah looks at her, he's like, you are so fine. I'm going to give you a goat. That's his thought. I'll give you a goat. One night, a baby goat. Now Tamar's smart. She looks around, she's like, you ain't got no baby goats right now. So will you give me something as a pledge until you send me this baby goat? She's smart. So Judah says, well, what pledge should I give you? And Tamar responds, your seal, its cord, and the staff in your hand. That's important. These are important details. The seal, sometimes it would be like a ring, like a signet ring. You'd see it sometimes in like movies. People will take a ring with a wax seal and has a stamp on it, and it's like their signature, or maybe even our equivalent would be like their driver's license kind of thing. So it's like identification. Sometimes it was a ring. Sometimes it was worn on a necklace on a cord. That's what it's referencing here. And so they would wear it around their neck. And the staff wasn't just like he was walking down the road and found a stick and like picked it up. This would have been like a staff that was made for him. It would have been one of those things where it's like, hey, nobody touches grandpa's staff kind of thing. Like it's his special thing. It would have identified who the owner was. And so these three things were pretty important in terms of it was obvious who the owner was. And so he says, hey, these are the three things. If you want to get with me, these are the three things I want to hold as pledge until the baby goat shows up. And so Judah's response is, deal. And so they go do what you do when you do those things. And here is the result. Tamar gets pregnant. Yeah. He doesn't know though, right? Takes about 3 months. And suddenly Tamar's back home with her dad. And she's wearing her widow's clothes and she starts to show. And so people naturally start asking questions like, hey girl, what happened here? So she's honest. She says, I prostituted myself. And I got pregnant. And so that person sneaks away and goes and tells Judah. Right? Goes and tells Judah, says, Judah, you will not believe. Your daughter-in-law, you're not going to believe it, Judah. She's so unholy. Guess what she did? And he was like, what? Tell me. She's pregnant. He's like, now that's not possible. No. She can't be. No, they've been dead a long time. He's like, no. She prostituted herself. And Judah loses his mind. He's like, no, not my daughter-in-law. No. Not my family. We are not doing those things. In fact, you know what he says? He says, bring her. We're going to burn her to death. He's like, we ain't having it. We ain't doing that in this family. No, sir. So, as they're bringing her, you got to imagine what's happened here. Judah has this response, like, we're going to burn her to death. That's his response. He sends his servants to go and get her. And so as her servants go to get, I'm sure as they showed up, they were like, hey, girl, Judah wants to see you because you ain't supposed to be pregnant because you ain't got a husband. Here's verse 25 says, as she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. So she's on the way, and she's like, hey, will you at least just give him this message? I am pregnant by the man who owns these. She had receipts. I'm pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. And she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. Now, for sure, as the servant gets there to take her, and she's like, hey, hold on, I got a message. She's like, okay, fine, what's your message? She's like, hey, this is the guy who did it. For sure, as soon as the servant sees what she's handing them, they see it as, oh no. These been missing for about 3 months. Oh no. So they take him back to Judah, and Judah's got a decision to make. What's he gonna say? I mean, obviously, it'd be pretty easy to discredit a prostitute, right? I mean, it's everybody knows that the ring and the cord and the staff have been missing for 3 months. So for him to say, hey, obviously she's wrecked her life. Obviously she's made some pretty stupid decisions. I don't know how my stuff went missing, and I don't know, you have to ask her whatever story she's got, but why would a prostitute tell the truth? I mean, someone who's about to be burned to death, they would probably say anything to save their life, right? He could have said that. And honestly, being the society that it's in, it probably would have worked. Judah saying what he said, they would have probably all believed him. I mean, after all, he had kind of hinted at, with the way he treated her, that the reason his first 2 sons were dead. But that's not what Judah says. Judah has a moment of spiritual clarity somehow. He has a moment of emotional intelligence. He has a moment of, honestly, he has a moment where he begins to earn the opportunity to have his name associated with the Lion of Judah. And so he responds with this, quote, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son, Shelah. In front of everyone, they put everything together for what happened. And he stands up in front of everyone and says, I know I was the guy pretending to be righteous. But the truth is, she's more righteous than I am. Because the first failure in this whole thing is, I didn't do what God asked me to do. And you hear the word righteous associated with that kind of scandal. And you wonder, Judah, I don't know if that's the right word. But the truth is, she was just doing what God desired. That God had put in place expectations for how to preserve a bloodline of the firstborn. And Judah was saying, this is a little inconvenient for me. I don't think I'm interested in doing what God's expectations were for me. And so he decided to write his own script of how this life would play out instead of following the expectations of God. And Tamar didn't even know why it was such a big deal. She just knew this is not what God wants. I don't know how to do what God wants other than this. And the result of that is Judah calls it righteousness. She just knew it mattered to God, and that was good enough for her. The truth is, this isn't a Genesis 38 Judah and Tamar story. Honestly, it's a you and me story. I mean, I would imagine we can all put ourselves in the place of Tamar, who's the recipient of a promise that was never kept. Maybe for some of you, it was a marriage vow. Or maybe it was a parent's promise. Or a boss's commitment. Or a friend that says, I'll always be there, but then isn't. And you're just stuck holding the pieces of a broken promise, and the person who made the promise isn't even aware that the broken pieces are things you step on every day in the light and in the dark that's cutting the bottom of your feet. They're oblivious. Or maybe you're the person who gets blamed for something that's not your fault. That it's your problem, it's your fault that something bad has happened when honestly you had nothing to do with it. You didn't kill those two boys. Or maybe people use the phrase with you, you're just too much, or you're the problem. And because of that, you just push everyone away who tries to get close to you, because what's the good in walking on more pieces of broken promised glass? So you just keep everyone at a distance. Or maybe people use the phrase with you, you ruin everything. It's not that you tried, it just keeps happening. You feel guilty about it. Or maybe you're just waiting on a fix for what you know and feel to be broken. You're waiting on an apology that might not ever come. You're waiting on a change in someone that honestly it's not your choice, it's theirs, and that change might not ever happen. You're waiting on a healing that's not in your future, or closure to something that isn't coming. You're just waiting for someone to finally do right by you. And it feels like Christmas just enhances those feelings, because the idea of hope in Christmas, at best, it's just hanging by a thread in your life. The truth is, Judah never will. People, they might not either. I remember so many Friday nights where I would sit on the porch of my grandmother's house, 3354 North Whitney Avenue. And I would wait for my mom to come and pick me up because it was her weekend. She just never came. I can't tell you how many sunsets I watched and experienced on that porch on Friday nights. It was a side street. It wasn't a main street. It wasn't a destination on that street. So the only reason you came to that street was because you were picking somebody up or you were coming home. And so I'd hear a car coming, and I'd get excited, and it would just be Vin, neighbor across the street, neighbors next door. Sometimes it feels like life is just hanging by a thread. And sometimes people just continue to people. And that's the reality for so many people at the holidays. But the truth is, while Judah never will, people, they may never, Jesus can. And that Christmas thread, I thought, was just hanging in there by the slimmest margin. It turns out when I really get into it, that thread's a lot stronger than I thought. Because it's a thread that Jesus gives when everything else falls and passes away. But the truth is, this is not just a you and me story. It's not just a Judah and Tamar story. And the reason I know this to be true is because what story this really is. You see, this story is actually a Christmas story. And I know if you're like versed in Bible study, you're like, no, bro, the Christmas story has shepherds and it has a manger and it's got 6 pound, 8 ounce baby Jesus. And it's got like Like magi, wise men? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. They come 2 years later. Read your Bible. But she's like, I know what the Christmas story is. Even if you're new to church, you're like, I get this. I get this. There's a guy by the name of Matthew. He ended up being a really close friend of Jesus. Didn't start that way, but he ended up being a really close friend of Jesus. Followed Jesus around as one of his disciples. And he has this incredible opportunity towards the end of his life to write a book about the life of Jesus. And we get this book in the very first book of the second part of the Bible. So we got the Old Testament that talks about the establishment of God's people and honestly tells us why we need Jesus. And then we get to the New Testament, which starts with the birth of Jesus, the teachings and life of Jesus, and the result of his teachings and life. At the very beginning of the New Testament, Matthew writes his book. And Matthew's entire purpose in writing his book was to make known to the Jewish people that Jesus is who their entire faith had been waiting on for centuries. That was the only reason he wrote it. We get the benefit as Gentiles, people who are not Jews, of reading his book, but that's the only reason he wrote it. It's one of the greatest Jewish works that any Jew has ever created. And he goes back through the Old Testament. He ties Jesus to so many moments. Before Paul, who was a Jewish church planter where people weren't, even before Paul, Matthew was just absolutely killing it. And he does incredible work with the Old Testament, tying it to who Jesus is. And so everything Matthew writes is to convince hardcore, long-time, generationally Jewish people Jesus is the Messiah the Old Testament talks about. And so everything in Matthew's gospel is so intentional. And as Matthew begins to tell the Christmas story, he starts with a genealogy. Now, when we open our Bibles and we want to read the Christmas story, we will skip to Luke chapter 2 because Luke chapter 1's got a bunch of names that we can't pronounce. Or we'll look at Matthew chapter 2 or the back half of chapter 1. And that idea is like we don't need the names, but Matthew wanted to make sure, hey, I'm giving you the setting for the Christmas story. The birth narrative has a setting, and it's important. If you're going to talk about the birth narrative, you know what helped the birth narrative come to light. And so Matthew, with all the intentionality in the world, says this in Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. You see, not only did Tamar get pregnant by Judah, she had twin boys, Perez and Zerah. I forgot his name for a second. Perez and Zerah. Perez ends up being in the line of Jesus. So when Matthew starts to put this together, he says, hey, look, here's the deal. Let me point this out. Judah doesn't actually become Judah that y'all know unless the son happens with Tamar. Like Judah's offspring, none of them give us Jesus. It's this afterthought, accident, scandalous moment that actually produces the line of Jesus. If it's not for Tamar, guess who's not there just a couple of generations later? David. David comes from Tamar. It's wild. Without Tamar, there is no little town of Bethlehem. Without Tamar, there is no David fighting Goliath. David never shows up. Maybe God's got another guy somewhere in someone else's ovaries, but I'm telling you, that David doesn't show up to fight Goliath. Without Tamar, man, the entire narrative, it falls apart. And so the question is, now Matthew, you're trying to get these devout, structured, like all put together Jews to agree with you that Jesus is the Messiah, the Savior they've been waiting for, and in your genealogy, you're going to air out all this dirty laundry? Like, you need to clean that up to make a better case. Why drag all this family mess into Christmas? Honestly, people, it's an easy answer. Because God wants every person who's been betrayed or forgotten or abandoned or blamed or shamed or silenced to know you still belong in the story. He wants you to know that you do not get cut out. He wants you to know that you don't get written off. He wants you to know that your value isn't determined by people who mishandled you, mistreated you, or tried to forget about you. He wants you to know that your hope isn't hanging by a thread, but it's hanging by His. And that thread is a thread of grace. The truth is, we say this a lot. We walk around and we'll say this phrase, Merry Christmas, and people will say it back to us, Merry Christmas. And it's something we put on wrapping paper. It shows up on tags. It shows up on bows. And it's just this recurring theme of the next, doing math, 16 days, right? 17 days. And we're going to say it so much. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. But what Matthew's trying to do, honestly, what every gospel author is trying to do, is to inform every single one of us just how deep Merry Christmas goes. That isn't just a saying. It's not just a culturally relevant back and forth. That it's a statement of what you believe. It's a statement of how you feel about Jesus. It's a statement that says, I believe more for you than maybe what's under a tree. And I believe more for you than maybe how people have treated you in your life. That our words, Merry Christmas, carry something with it, especially for those who are hanging on by a thread. You see, the greatest Merry Christmas is one that's served with grace. Not grace as in the prayer we have before we eat, but grace as in the one that covers the dysfunction of Tamar and Judah and includes Tamar in the story and the lineage of the Son of God. The kind of grace that says, hey, y'all might have done the wildest things, but the truth is important and your story matters. And without your wildness, without you allowing God to do something, remember, Judah has to admit, Judah's got to say, hey, this was my dysfunction. I went and I slept with a prostitute, tried to give her a goat, and this is the mess I'm in. And God takes that honesty, takes that dysfunction, and says, if you'll give it to me, in exchange, I'll give you Jesus. That's Merry Christmas. And so as you have that exchange, it is my hope that grace sits in the weight of those two words for every single one of you. And you don't have to give a sermon with it, but I do want you to give it with some feeling. That when you look in someone's eyes and you give them their first or 31st or 151st Merry Christmas of the season, they see that it comes from a place not out of habit, but out of passion. That you look in their eyes and they can just tell there's something bigger about this Merry Christmas than just Merry Christmas. How do you communicate grace with your eyes, a smile, and two words? That's for you to figure out. Hopefully it's challenge accepted and the Spirit of God would work in each of you over the next couple of weeks as we make our way to Christmas Eve to celebrate one of the greatest moments in human history, not as an aside, not as a family function of something we do on Christmas Eve, but because this is such an enormous deal. The idea that we would gather as a church to remember that moment. It's not about you, it's about us. And we would gather in that moment, and our hearts and our minds would be ready to say, I'm going to set aside an opportunity for the church to gather and celebrate every Merry Christmas I handed out over the next couple of weeks. And if that's your intent, if this isn't just a list of holiday functions, if you begin to prioritize the idea of Merry Christmas being served with grace as something beyond just something you say in the holidays, there's no telling what the Spirit of God will pour out in this place and the places you walk over the next couple of weeks. It's also why I continue to say week after week, there's no excuse for anyone who's connected to you to spend Christmas Eve alone. Like every single one of us, our Merry Christmas can be followed with and what are you doing on Christmas Eve? And if they've got plans, then they got plans. But there's so many people that I have conversation with that do not have plans. And they're just looking for an opportunity to tag along. Their family's out of town or their family has passed away and they are by themselves. And the only thing they wish for is to be invited, which is another way of saying to be included. So that's part of our Merry Christmas. We have work to do between now and Christmas Eve. Good work, though. There's an invitation that comes with this. Some of you, it's time for you to have an actual definition of Merry Christmas. Some of you have been listening to Bible study on Sunday mornings and maybe even started some prayer in your own life. But it's time for you to actually say, I believe, and I'm ready to follow Jesus. And these next 2 weeks might be an incredible opportunity for you to journey towards a manger that ultimately leads you to a cross. And that cross will drastically change the word Merry and Christmas in your life forever. And so our church is here to walk with you in that discovery journey.